My name is Talia Morgan. I'm 33, a senior procurement manager for a regional hospital network, and the woman calling me in a panic from behind a front door that no longer recognized her key was my mother. Her name flashed across my phone again, then again. Through the doorbell camera, I could see Diane standing on the porch beside my older sister Jocelyn. A rental moving truck filled the driveway behind them. Jocelyn's 10-year-old daughter, Maya, stood near the passenger door, while 7-year-old Noah held his backpack against his chest. My mother tried her key for the fourth time. It still didn't work. Less than 24 hours earlier, she had looked me in the face and said, "Your sister is coming with her 2 kids to live with us, so you need to leave, you parasite." I had laughed because nothing else made sense. "You're joking, right?" My mother laughed too, but there was no warmth in it. "No, I'm serious." Now she was hammering her fist against the door and calling me as though I were the one who had created an emergency. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, my stomach tightened when I looked at Maya and Noah. They hadn't made the promise that brought them to that porch. They hadn't decided my home belonged to them. The adults had done that. The first question was obvious. Why had I changed the locks? The more important question was why my mother had been so certain I would surrender the moment she ordered me to leave. Before I take you back to the night this began, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and like the video. If someone has ever mistaken your kindness for permission to control you, you'll understand why I couldn't keep pretending this was normal. To understand how my mother ended up panicking outside that locked door, we need to rewind to the previous evening before the moving truck, before the unanswered calls, and before she discovered that I had finally stopped obeying her. I came home from work and found Diane sitting at the kitchen island drinking tea from one of my favorite mugs. Her handbag rested on the chair beside her. The spare key I had given her months earlier lay on the counter beside her phone. She hadn't told me she was coming over. That was no longer unusual. The key had originally been for emergencies, but somewhere along the way, my mother had decided that having access meant she no longer needed an invitation. "You're home," she said, as if I had arrived late for a meeting she had scheduled inside my house. I placed my work bag beside the stairs. "What are you doing here?" "We need to discuss the bedrooms." That word stopped me. Bedrooms. For several weeks, she had been asking questions that never quite connected. She wanted to know which schools served my neighborhood. She had mentioned that the upstairs rooms were wasted because I lived alone. Once I caught her studying the hallway with a measuring tape in her hand. Every time I asked why, she changed the subject. Now she pushed her mug aside and folded her hands. "Jocelyn is having a difficult time," she said. "You know the separation has been hard on her." "I know." "She shouldn't have to struggle when this family has plenty of space." I looked around the kitchen. "What exactly are you saying?" My mother answered without hesitation. "Your sister is coming with her 2 kids to live with us, so you need to leave." For a second, I genuinely believed I had misunderstood her. Then I laughed. It wasn't because anything was funny. It was the reflexive laugh that escapes when someone says something too ridiculous to process. "You're joking, right?" Diane's mouth curved into a smile. "No, I'm serious." The laughter disappeared from my throat. "You've already decided this?" "Jocelyn needs the house more than you do." "The house?" "You heard me." "And where am I supposed to go?" My mother shrugged. "You earn good money. Find an apartment. Stay with one of your work friends. You always manage somehow." She said it as though my ability to survive made it acceptable to take from me. "When is Jocelyn supposed to arrive?" "Tomorrow morning, I'm picking them up." That meant Jocelyn was already packing. A truck had probably been reserved. My mother had made an entire plan involving my life before deciding I deserved to know about it. "Does Jocelyn know you haven't discussed this with me?" Diane's expression hardened. "She knows I'll handle you." Handle me, not ask me, not convince me, handle me. I stared at the spare key on the counter. For years, I had mistaken surrender for peace. I paid bills before anyone asked. I solved emergencies before they became embarrassing. Whenever Jocelyn fell apart, my mother looked at me as though competence were an unpaid family position I had accepted at birth. But that evening, something changed. Diane wasn't asking for help. She was erasing me from the decision entirely. "You have more than enough," she continued. "Your sister has 2 children. Stop being selfish." You're telling me to leave tomorrow. I'm telling you to stop behaving like a parasite and finally do something useful for this family. The insult landed differently from everything she had said before it. My mother watched my face, waiting for the usual reaction, the explanation, the apology, the promise that I would fix everything. I gave her none of them. Instead, I asked, "You're absolutely certain this is what you want?" "Yes." "And you're leaving in the morning to collect them?" "Yes, Talia, I already told you." I nodded once. My calmness seemed to satisfy her. She believed silence meant surrender because, for most of my life, it had. "Good," she said. "Be gone before we return. Leave your keys on the counter." She collected her spare key and slipped it into her handbag. I went upstairs, closed my bedroom door, and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were steady, but my chest felt hollow. There was a contact in my phone I had hoped I wouldn't need. I opened the message thread and typed, "She confirmed it, tomorrow morning." The reply arrived less than a minute later. "Then we follow the plan." I barely slept. The next morning, Diane moved through the house with the confidence of someone expecting to inherit the result of her own cruelty. She spoke to Jocelyn twice, confirming when the truck would arrive and which exit they would take. Before leaving, she paused near the front door. "I expect everything to be ready when we get back." I stood near the stairs and looked at her. "It will be." She smiled, pleased by what she thought she heard. Then she walked outside, climbed into her car, and drove away to collect Jocelyn and the children. I waited until her car disappeared around the corner. Then I picked up my phone and made the first call. The first person I called was Renee Lawson. She answered before the second ring. "Your mother is gone?" I watched her drive away, and she confirmed that Jocelyn is moving in today. She told me to leave my keys on the counter. Renee was silent for a moment. She had been my friend for 11 years, but that morning I needed her experience as a real estate attorney more than I needed reassurance. "Then follow the plan," she said. "Don't improvise because you're angry. Document everything." 2 weeks earlier, I had visited Renee after finding my mother measuring the upstairs hallway. Diane had claimed she was curious whether a bookcase would fit there, but she didn't own a bookcase that size. The next day, she asked which elementary school served my address. That was when I stopped dismissing the warning signs. Renee examined the deed, mortgage, insurance records, and every document connected to the house. My name was the only one on all of them. Diane wasn't a tenant. She had never paid rent, received mail there, or used my address as her residence. Her driver's license, insurance, voter registration, and financial accounts all listed her condominium. She was a guest with a spare key, nothing more. Renee advised me to prepare in case my mother attempted to move Jocelyn in without permission. I reserved a furnished apartment on a month-to-month agreement, transferred my important documents to a secure storage unit, and packed the possessions I couldn't risk losing. I hoped those preparations would prove unnecessary. Then my mother ordered me out. My second call was to the locksmith Renee had already vetted. My third was to the small moving crew I had placed on standby. By the time the locksmith arrived, I had photographed every room. I recorded the condition of the property, inventoried the few things Diane kept in the guest room, and sent Renee copies. The locksmith checked my identification and ownership documents before beginning. As his tool struck the first lock, a wave of guilt moved through me. It sounded so final. For months, I had told myself that Diane's behavior was irritating but harmless. She entered without calling, reorganized my kitchen, invited relatives over, and referred to my house as though it belonged to the entire family. I disliked it, but I tolerated it. Changing the locks forced me to admit what I had avoided. My mother's access had stopped being a symbol of trust. It had become a weapon she expected me to be afraid of losing. The movers arrived shortly afterward. Because I had prepared, the process was quiet and fast. They loaded my clothes, electronics, personal files, photographs, and the few pieces of furniture I wanted in the apartment. Most of the larger furniture remained for the house to be staged and sold if necessary. Diane's belongings filled only 3 boxes. That fact hurt more than I expected. She had another home. She had always had another home. Yet she had spoken as though I was throwing her onto the street when all I was doing was returning her possessions to the condominium where she legally lived. I arranged for the boxes to be delivered there and photographed the sealed packages. Then I sent Diane written notice. Her guest access had been revoked. She did not have permission to enter, occupy, or authorize anyone else to occupy the house. Jocelyn had never received permission to move in. Any future communication about the property would have to be in writing. I sent the same notice to Jocelyn. Neither woman responded. They were probably still in the rental truck, congratulating themselves on how easily they had handled me. The locksmith installed the final lock and reset the security system. I stood alone in the entryway, looking at the door my mother had expected me to walk through carrying a suitcase and an apology. Instead, I locked it behind me. By early afternoon, I was inside the furnished apartment. It was smaller than my house and had none of the personal touches that made a place feel permanent. But when I closed the door, I felt something I hadn't experienced at home in months: privacy. I placed my phone on the counter and tried to eat. Less than an hour later, the doorbell camera notified me of movement. Diane's car entered the driveway first. The rental truck followed. Jocelyn climbed out wearing the strained expression she carried whenever she believed the world had failed to organize itself around her needs. Maya and Noah stepped out behind her. My mother walked directly to the front door. She inserted her key. It didn't turn. She removed it, examined it, and tried again. Jocelyn came closer. "What's wrong?" Her key probably jammed. My mother tried a third time, then reached for her phone. My screen lit up. I let the call ring. Diane called again. Then Jocelyn called. Then Diane. Through the camera, I watched my mother pound on the door. "Talia!" she shouted. "Open this door!" My phone vibrated across the counter. I answered on the next call. "What did you do?" Diane demanded. "You told me to leave. I told you to move your things. I didn't tell you to lock us out." "You don't live there." Silence. It lasted only a second, but I heard the shock inside it. Not shock because she had forgotten the truth. Shock because I had finally said it aloud. "Stop playing games," she snapped. "Jocelyn has a truck full of furniture and the children are exhausted. I sent both of you written notice. Nobody has permission to enter. This is our family home. No, it's my house." Jocelyn moved closer to the phone. "What does that mean?" "It means exactly what I said." My mother's voice dropped. "You're really going to behave this way in front of your niece and nephew?" I looked at the camera again. Maya stood beside the truck with her arms folded tightly across her chest. Noah was still holding his backpack. The sight made my resolve hurt, but it didn't make the facts disappear. "Take the children somewhere comfortable," I said. "This isn't their fault." "Then unlock the door," Jocelyn said. "No." My mother made a sound of disbelief. "You can't keep us out. I can keep anyone out who doesn't have my permission. You gave me a key. I gave you guest access while you recovered from your knee operation. Your residence is your condominium. I am your mother. That doesn't put your name on the deed." Jocelyn stared at Diane. The camera didn't capture every word she said, but I saw the question form on her face. "Deed?" Diane turned away from her. That small movement told me Jocelyn had not been given the complete story. My mother knew the house was mine. She had always known. But she had apparently allowed Jocelyn to believe that her authority was legal rather than emotional. "Talia," Diane said, forcing her voice into a calmer register. "You're upset. I understand that. Come back and open the door. We'll talk about this inside." "No, we're family. We were family yesterday when you called me a parasite. I was angry. You were certain." Jocelyn took the phone from her. "You knew we were coming. Mom said this was already settled." "She never asked me. Where are we supposed to go? You still have your apartment." Jocelyn didn't answer. That hesitation told me there was more to the emergency than either of them wanted me to know. Behind her, my mother pulled at the door handle again. I ended the call. The phone began ringing almost immediately, but I placed it face down. The panic outside the house wasn't caused by anything I had taken from them. It was caused by the fact that for the first time, they had built an entire plan around my surrender, and I hadn't surrendered. Section 3. The children. Jocelyn sent me a message 5 minutes later. "You have made 2 children homeless." I read it 3 times. Then I called her. She answered with, Have you finally come to your senses? When does your lease end? That isn't the issue. What date, Jocelyn? She exhaled sharply. 17 days from now. So your apartment is still legally available. The truck is already loaded. That doesn't terminate your lease. We can't unload everything again. That was the emergency my mother had described as homelessness, not the absence of shelter, inconvenience, embarrassment, the cost of reversing a decision they had made without me. Where are Maya and Noah? I asked. In the truck. Take them somewhere with air conditioning. Unlock the house. No, you keep saying you care about them. I do care about them. That is why I'm asking you to stop keeping them in a driveway while you pressure me. Her voice dropped. You have 4 bedrooms, Talia. 4. You live alone. How can you look at my children and decide empty rooms matter more than they do? For a moment, the question found the exact wound it was designed to reach. I had attended their school programs, bought birthday gifts, and kept spare pajamas for them when they visited. I loved them. That love made it tempting to solve the immediate problem and deal with the violation later. But that was how every previous boundary had disappeared. Diane created urgency, Jocelyn supplied guilt. I provided the solution. Then everyone acted as though the solution had belonged to them from the beginning. Your children matter, I said. That doesn't give you my house. She ended the call. My hands shook after the screen went dark. The facts were clear, but clarity didn't erase guilt. I pictured Maya trying not to ask questions because she had always been sensitive to adult tension. I pictured Noah clutching his backpack and wondering whether he had done something wrong. I nearly called back. Before I could, another call arrived. Marcus Price. Jocelyn's separated husband rarely contacted me directly, but he sounded controlled rather than confrontational. What happened? What did Jocelyn tell you? That you locked them out after agreeing they could move in? I never agreed. He was quiet. Did you know the house belongs to me? Of course. Jocelyn apparently didn't. She knows you bought that house. That answer changed something. Maybe she didn't know every legal detail, but she knew enough to understand that Diane could not promise the property without asking me. Are the children able to stay with you? I asked. They have a bedroom here. I've been asking Jocelyn to let them stay while she sorts out housing. Can you pick them up now? I'm already on the way. Relief came so quickly that I had to sit down. Please keep them out of the argument. I will. 30 minutes later, the doorbell camera showed Marcus's truck arriving. He spoke briefly with Jocelyn. She gestured toward the house several times, but Marcus didn't approach the door. Maya and Noah climbed into his truck with their backpacks. They were safe. The moral emergency my mother had constructed was over. Diane and Jocelyn remained in the driveway for another 20 minutes. They argued beside the rental truck before finally leaving. By evening, Jocelyn had arranged to return to her apartment. The furniture had to be unloaded again, and she lost part of the money paid to the moving company. Those were real consequences. They were also consequences of her choices. My mother went back to her condominium where her boxes had already been delivered. She called me 14 times that night. I answered none of them. The next morning, the family group chat exploded. My mother had written a long account in which she claimed I had secretly changed the locks while she was helping my abandoned daughter and grandchildren. In her version, she lived with me. In her version, she had sacrificed for years to support me. In her version, Jocelyn and the children had nowhere else to go. The word owner never appeared. Relatives began contacting me. Some demanded that I apologize. Others suggested I give Jocelyn a few months in the house while we worked through the misunderstanding. A cousin I had not spoken to in nearly a year informed me that houses were less important than mothers. Nobody asked why my mother had the authority to give away a house that wasn't hers. Nobody asked whether the children were safe. They simply accepted the family roles Diane had spent years teaching them. She was the sacrificing mother. Jocelyn was the struggling daughter. I was the capable one who could absorb whatever remained. I muted the group chat. For most of that day, I concentrated on work. Purchase orders and supplier agreements were easier to manage than people who believed my competence was consent. But that evening, the apartment felt painfully temporary. The walls were bare. My belongings were still inside labeled boxes. The unfamiliar silence made me wonder whether I had overreacted. I could have let Jocelyn stay for a month. I could have required rent. I could have returned to the house and imposed rules. Every compromise sounded reasonable until I remembered that neither woman had asked. They had already decided. My phone lit up with another message from Diane. You have humiliated this family. Fix it before everyone sees what kind of daughter you really are. I stared at those words. She wasn't asking whether I was safe. She wasn't asking whether we could repair what happened. She was worried that people might stop believing her. I opened the muted family chat and read the accusations again. Silence had protected my dignity the day before. Now it was protecting her lie. I called Renee. I think I need to respond. Then respond once, she said. Correct the facts. Don't argue about your worth. That distinction mattered. I didn't need to convince my family that I was good. I needed to decide whether they were entitled to remain wrong about what happened. I opened my laptop and began collecting the records. Section 4, the records. I started with the deed. My full legal name appeared as the sole owner. Next came the mortgage statements showing 6 years of payments from my accounts. I added the insurance policy, property tax records, and utility statements. Then I documented Diane's actual residence. Her condominium was safe, furnished, and entirely hers. Her mail went there. Her legal records used that address. The few belongings she had kept at my house had already been returned. Finally, I opened the folder I had avoided. It contained proof of the expenses I had paid for her, condominium association fees, her phone bill, repairs she called emergencies, medical expenses not covered by insurance. Whenever she needed help, I transferred the money quietly because I never wanted her to feel ashamed. She had taken that silence and used it to call me a parasite. I didn't upload every private financial record to the group chat. My goal wasn't to strip my mother of dignity. I prepared a short factual statement. The house is solely owned and financed by me. Mom does not reside there and has a separate condominium. Jocelyn never received permission to move in. Her lease remains active, and the children are safely staying with their father. I have also covered several of Mum's regular expenses for years. I will not debate this further. I attached the deed, one mortgage statement, confirmation of Diane's legal address, and limited proof of the payments. Then I pressed send. The group chat went silent. 10 minutes passed without a response. Then one relative wrote, Diane, is this true? My mother replied almost immediately. Documents don't tell the full story. Another relative asked, is Talia the only owner? Diane didn't answer. Jocelyn did. Mum told me the house was family property. I looked at that sentence for a long time. Then I typed, did she tell you I had agreed to move? Jocelyn responded, she said she would handle it. That isn't what I asked. No answer. My mother began posting paragraphs about motherhood, sacrifice, and how children owed their parents more than signatures on paper. But the conversation had changed. For the first time, relatives asked her direct questions. Had she paid the mortgage? No. Was her name on the deed? No. Did she have her own home? Yes. Had I approved Jocelyn's move? No. One by one, the assumptions supporting her story collapsed. Several relatives apologized to me privately. Others simply stopped speaking. The silence didn't feel like victory. It felt like confirmation that many of them had condemned me without needing facts. My mother called. I answered because I wanted to hear whether exposure had changed anything. How could you publish my private finances? She demanded. I provided enough information to correct what you told them. You made me look dependent. You called me a parasite. I was trying to motivate you to help your sister. You ordered me out of my own house. Our family helped make you who you are. That doesn't give you my property. You care more about documents than people. No, I care that you lied about both. She inhaled slowly. You should delete those messages and tell everyone you misunderstood. That was the moment I understood she wasn't embarrassed by what she had done. She was embarrassed that other people could now see it. Did you tell Jocelyn that I agreed? I told her you would do the right thing. That means no. It means I know my daughter. You knew the daughter I was when I still believed being useful would make you respect me. She ended the call. A few minutes later, Jocelyn sent screenshots to the group chat. She intended them to prove that Diane had promised her the house. Instead, they revealed something else. In the first screenshot, Jocelyn had written, "Are you sure Talia won't fight this?" Diane's answer appeared below it. "She has no choice. Once you arrive with the children, she won't make a scene." Another message from Jocelyn read, "But the house is in her name." Diane replied, "That doesn't matter. She owes this family." I read those messages twice. Jocelyn hadn't believed Diane owned the house. She knew I did. She had simply hoped arriving with Maya and Noah would make refusal emotionally impossible. I returned to the chat. "You knew." Jocelyn began typing, stopped, and started again. "I knew your name was on it. Mum said you understood the house was for family. You asked whether I would fight. That means you knew I hadn't agreed. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen?" No answer arrived. Diane sent a furious message demanding that Jocelyn delete the screenshots. Jocelyn replied, "You said she would leave." "I said she should leave," Diane wrote. "There's a difference." That difference destroyed what remained of their alliance. Jocelyn called her a liar. Diane accused Jocelyn of being ungrateful. They argued in the family chat until another relative told them to stop. I closed the application. I had wanted the truth to make me feel lighter. Instead, it exposed how deliberate everything had been. My mother knew she lacked authority. My sister knew I had not consented. Both believed my love for the children could be converted into access to my home. That betrayal hurt more than the insult. The word parasite had been cruel, but it was spoken in anger. The screenshots showed planning. I didn't respond to any more messages that night. The following morning, Jocelyn called. Her voice was quieter. "Mom lied to me." She did. "I thought she had some arrangement with you." "You knew enough to ask whether I would fight," she exhaled. "I didn't want to ask you directly because I thought you'd say no." There it was. Not innocence, avoidance. "I'm sorry," she said. "I wasn't ready to accept it." "You're sorry because the plan failed." "That isn't fair." "It may not be, but it's honest." She began crying, quietly rather than theatrically. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do. For the next 17 days, you still have an apartment. The children are safe with Marcus. After that, you need a housing plan that doesn't depend on taking something from someone who never offered it." "You make it sound simple." "No, I'm saying it's yours to solve." She was silent. For once, I didn't fill the silence with an offer. Section 5. Eichstätt's The Cost. Jocelyn returned to her apartment. The landlord allowed her to continue through the remainder of the lease because she had not formally surrendered possession. She and Marcus divided the children's time while she searched for somewhere affordable. For the first few days, she continued sending me apartment listings that were beyond her budget. I didn't choose one for her. I didn't negotiate deposits. I didn't offer money. When she asked what I thought, I told her to calculate the rent against her actual income and the child support arrangement she was establishing with Marcus. It felt unnatural to stop solving things. Every unanswered request produced guilt. But each time I resisted, Jocelyn took another step herself. She asked for additional hours at work. She reduced expenses she had previously considered untouchable. She found a smaller apartment within commuting distance of the children's school and arranged a payment schedule for the security deposit. It wasn't the four-bedroom house my mother had promised her. It was hers. That difference mattered. Marcus remained steady throughout the transition. He kept Maya and Noah in their routines, handled school transportation during Jocelyn's move, and refused to let either side use the children as messengers. The children never became homeless. They never missed school. The catastrophe Diane described never existed. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Jocelyn asked to meet me somewhere neutral. I agreed to a coffee shop. When she arrived, she looked tired, but she wasn't carrying rental applications or bills. She didn't begin with a request. "I owe you an apology," she said. I waited. "I knew Mom didn't own your house. I didn't know every detail, but I knew it was yours. When she said she could make you leave, I let myself believe her because believing her solved my problem. That's what hurt. I also knew bringing Maya and Noah would make it harder for you to say no." Hearing her admit it hurt, but it also separated her from Diane in an important way. She was naming what she had done, No excuses, no demand that I understand before she accepted responsibility. I'm sorry, she continued, not because the plan failed, because I treated your love for my children like leverage. I looked down at my hands. I love them, I know. But loving them doesn't mean you can use them to enter my life whenever you want. I understand. I'm not giving you money. You won't receive a key to wherever I live next. And I'm not going to pretend everything between us is fixed. She nodded. I'm not asking you to. That was the first apology in my family that didn't arrive with an invoice attached. I accepted the apology without restoring the old relationship. Trust returned slowly, if at all. We spoke occasionally. Jocelyn sent updates about the children, but she stopped placing them inside adult disagreements. When Maya asked why they hadn't moved into my house, Jocelyn told her the truth, in language a child could understand. The adults had made plans for a home that wasn't theirs. Later, I met Maya and Noah at a park while Marcus and Jocelyn handled the exchange between their custody days. Maya stayed close to me. Are you mad at us? She asked. Never. Grandma said you didn't want us. I wanted the adults to ask before making decisions. None of this was your fault. Noah studied my face. Can we still visit you? When I invite you, absolutely. That answer represented the new shape of my life. Not rejection, invitation. There was one relationship that did not begin healing. Diane refused to acknowledge the difference between consequence and cruelty. The record showed that I had paid her condominium association fees and phone bill for years. I also covered unexpected expenses whenever she said she was short. Those payments were gifts, not legal obligations. I sent her written notice that I would continue them for 60 days. After that, she would need to assume responsibility. She called within minutes. You're cutting off your own mother. I'm giving you 2 months to adjust. After everything I did for you, I've paid those expenses because I wanted to help. I no longer want help to be treated as something you own. You're punishing me. No, I'm ending an arrangement that is damaging both of us. Your sister apologized and suddenly she's forgiven. I'm the villain forever. Jocelyn admitted what she did. I was trying to protect my grandchildren. You tried to give away my house. You weren't using all of it. That answer removed any remaining doubt. My mother still believed unused space created entitlement. She still believed my ability to endure a loss made taking from me acceptable. What would an apology from you sound like? I asked. She paused. I'm sorry this became such a disaster. That's regret about the result. What more do you want? I want you to say you had no right to order me out. You're obsessed with being right. I'm asking whether you understand what you did. I understand that you embarrassed your mother and abandoned your family over a house. Nothing had changed. I'll continue the payments for 60 days, I said. After that, they stop. She hung up. The family pressure gradually faded. Once the facts were known, Diane could no longer speak with the same authority. Some relatives continued insisting that I should forgive her because she was my mother. I stopped explaining that forgiveness and access were different things. The house remained empty. At first, I considered returning. It was mine, and part of me resisted the idea that Diane's actions could drive me away from something I had worked 6 years to own. But each time I entered, I remembered her sitting at the kitchen island with my mug, planning how quickly I should disappear. The rooms no longer felt peaceful, they felt contested. Keeping the property solely to prove I had won would allow the conflict to continue defining my choices. I contacted a real estate agent and listed it for sale. Diane discovered the listing online. She called from a different number after I stopped answering hers. You can't sell that house. I can. It belongs in the family. It has never belonged to the family. What about Jocelyn? She has an apartment. What about the children? They have 2 safe homes. What about me? You have your condominium. Her voice sharpened. So this is revenge. No, this is me choosing where I want to live. If you sell, there'll be no way to undo this. That's the point. Several weeks passed. Jocelyn settled into her smaller apartment. Maya chose where to hang her drawings, and Noah claimed a corner near the living room window for his toys. Marcus maintained shared custody without using the arrangement to pressure Jocelyn into reconciliation. Their lives became quieter once nobody was waiting for my house to solve them. An ordinary buyer submitted a reasonable offer. I accepted it. The closing date was scheduled near the end of the fourth month. When Diane learned the sale was moving forward, she asked to meet me one final time. I agreed because I wanted to know whether losing the house as a possible family resource had taught her anything. Section 6, The Last Key. Diane chose the lobby of her condominium building. She arrived carrying the same handbag she had brought to my house on the night of the ultimatum. For one irrational second, I imagined the old spare key might still be inside it. She sat across from me. "You look tired," she said. "I'm fine. That apartment can't be comfortable. It's temporary. You wouldn't need temporary housing if you stopped being stubborn." There it was, not an apology, an invitation to return to the old arrangement while pretending none of it had happened. "The sale closes next week," I said. "I know. If you ask me here to stop it, the answer is no." She looked toward the lobby windows. "I don't understand how you can throw away a home over one argument." "It wasn't one argument. It was the moment you made the arrangement between us undeniable." "What arrangement?" "I provided things. You treated that as proof that I owed more." "I'm your mother. Of course I expected you to help." "Help is requested. What you did was decided without me." "You always make everything sound like a contract. And you make every boundary sound like betrayal." She pressed her lips together. "I could forgive the locks," she said. I almost laughed. She still believed forgiveness was hers to grant. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I corrected what you told them. You made Jocelyn turn against me. You lied to her. I gave her hope. You gave her my house." Diane leaned forward. "Don't you understand what will happen after the sale? That house will belong to strangers. Maya and Noah will never grow up there. Jocelyn will never have the stability you could have provided. And one day, when you finally want a family of your own, you'll realize what you threw away." The old version of me would have defended every decision. I would have explained that Jocelyn's apartment was stable, that the children were safe, and that selling one property did not eliminate my future. Instead, I asked one question. "Do you believe you had the right to order me out?" My mother looked at me for several seconds. "I believe a good daughter would have understood why I did it." That was her final answer, not because she lacked the words, because accountability would require surrendering the authority she valued more than our relationship. I stood. "The 60 days end Friday. The condominium fees and phone payments will stop after that. You're really leaving me with nothing. You have a home, retirement income, and the ability to manage your expenses. I have a daughter who has decided I'm disposable." "No, you have a daughter who is no longer disposable to herself." I walked away before she could turn that sentence into another argument. The sale closed the following week. There was no dramatic confrontation at the title office, no final attempt to block the transfer. The documents were reviewed, signed, and recorded through the ordinary process Renee had explained. Afterward, I returned to the house one last time. The rooms were empty. Without furniture, every sound traveled farther than it should have. My footsteps echoed through the kitchen where Diane had delivered her ultimatum. I stood beside the island. For 6 years, that house had represented success. I had bought it after years of careful saving. I selected every fixture, repaired what broke, and paid every bill. I believed that having enough space meant I could welcome the people I loved. The house had never betrayed me, but my family had treated my welcome as a transfer of ownership. That was why I had to let it go. I walked through each room, not to mourn the property, but to recognize what it had taught me. The guest room taught me that generosity needed limits. The hallway taught me to notice when questions were actually plans. The front door taught me that a key was not a permanent right. In the kitchen, I remembered my mother calling me a parasite while sitting inside the life I financed. The word no longer hurt in the same way. It belonged to her version of me. I didn't live inside that version anymore. I closed the front door and handed over the final key. The proceeds from the sale gave me options, but they weren't the victory. The victory was that I no longer needed the house to prove it had always been mine. Diane assumed responsibility for her own bills after the transition period. She complained to relatives, but fewer people responded. Once the facts were known, her victim story could no longer command the same automatic loyalty. She and Jocelyn remained in contact, although their relationship changed. Jocelyn stopped accepting promises simply because Diane delivered them with confidence. My relationship with Jocelyn remained cautious. She continued working additional hours and managing the smaller apartment. She and Marcus developed a more reliable co-parenting routine without reconciling romantically. Sometimes Jocelyn and I spoke twice in one week. Sometimes a month passed. Neither of us pretended that an apology erased what happened. But she respected my boundaries, and that gave us something honest to build from. I saw Maya and Noah when invited plans worked for everyone. They came to understand that my refusal had never been a rejection of them. It was a refusal to let adults use them as permission. Diane and I remained estranged. She sent occasional messages about family duty, but none contained the accountability I had asked for. I stopped reading them as invitations to reconciliation. They were attempts to reopen negotiations I had already ended. 4 months after the ultimatum, I moved into a smaller home chosen entirely for my own needs. There were fewer rooms, but none of them carried another person's expectations. On my first evening there, I unpacked the final box and found the small dish I had always kept near the door. I placed it on the entry table. Then I set my new key inside it. One key, no secret copy, no spare waiting beneath a flower pot, no access granted because someone shared my blood or believed my kindness made permission unnecessary. I still loved my family. I still helped people when help was freely requested and freely chosen. But I no longer confused love with surrender. The house had been mine. The final decision was mine. And from that moment forward, entry into my life would come through invitation, not guilt.